And we're back. So,
Hello.
hope you all enjoyed your break.
We are.
Well, okay then. So, I believe that I was going to go next and mention what is undoubtedly my favorite system in the world. I've been role playing for a really long time, played a lot of systems, GM'd a lot of systems, but of all of those, there is really just, well, I guess technically two because they're kind of in two parts, but whatever. Point is, there is one set of systems that is kind of my baby, and that would be Eden Studios Unisystem and Unisystem Lite, or cinematic Unisystem. I'm a big fan of them because they are really, really simple, really rules light games that are designed. The name Unisystem means, is meant to mean that the games are built to be able to do basically anything. They use the same core system for a zombie game, a conspiracy game, a superhero game, a magic user, World of Darkness-y kind of game, like all this different type of stuff, and it all works within this system, which is great for me because I get bored of an individual setting or theme relatively quickly. I don't like to be kind of tied down for a really long time, for years on one type of game, and not having to switch up systems every time I want to try something a little bit different, and have books and rules that are just straight out of the box there to support that is really nice for me. It also is great because it's a really easy system to run for the GM, and it's a really easy system for people to pick up and play, which helps because I like to run games for younger players, for total newbies, and kids who are only just getting introduced to role-playing as a concept. And Unisystem works really well at being able to bring them in while also having enough kind of crunchiness, enough rules, and areas, areas with more intense rules and stuff for players like you guys who have been playing for much longer. So it's a nice balance for me.
It's a great system. You've turned me into a Unisystem fanatic, by the way.
Good to know.
I recently actually did the playtest of the Power Ranger system. I did based on Unisystem, and it actually ran fairly smoothly. And like you said, it's pretty easy to slip into the roles and use.
Yeah, and that's the other thing.
I think it allows for
No, go on.
No.
Oh, I was just gonna say.
Allows for kind of a greater freedom with the rules.
No. I was going to say was that's another, the other thing. The game has a lot of the system has a lot of books and expansions for doing a whole bunch of different things. One of the cool things I like about it is their primary line is All Flesh Must Be Eaten, which is a zombie role-playing game, and they threw out a lot of supplements for it, essentially expansions. But instead of doing here is this continent or here's all these new rules, instead they really kind of went with thematic expansions. So there's a pirate expansion, there's a Old West expansion, there's a rules for playing sci-fi or high fantasy or martial arts, or
literally all tied into zombies.
All tied into zombies, but all also very workable as a just general good book for running any sort of game you want using this kind of theme. And the themes are pretty broad. Like I say, westerns, but I don't just mean they have a Western setting. I mean they have a system that has chapters on here's what you do if you want to run a spaghetti Western, or here's what you want to do if you want to run a hardcore real-life Western, or an old-school John Wayne kind of heroicized Western, or even just a completely guitars and singing and white hats and black hats ludicrous Western.
Bubba Hotep.
Yeah, it's kind of cool that way. It has these these broad categories that allow you to really do some crazy things. And using that, I've been able to build a Mass Effect game. I built a Half-Life game. Hell, I can't even remember most of the games I've created, but I've created all sorts of games based on licensed properties and just crazy ideas that popped into my head, like Civil War with vampires, or the fall of Rome if it had taken place in a Tolkien-esque fantasy world. And it takes me like 5 minutes with the right books to just throw it together, and it's done. It's great.
There's also kind of one of our successful games as a group is actually Unisystem based, and that is our Buffy game.
Right. The other thing is, the other side of Unisystem is cinematic Unisystem, which is the actual...
my personal favorite side of it.
Yeah, I actually... In some ways, I like cinematic better than standard as a core system. It's even more rules light. It cuts down the number of skills. Like, the game is very focused on being able to kind of give you the options to play any type of character you want, even if the type of character you want to play is a bureaucratic beautician with no combat abilities, who's essentially just, zombie chow. But cinematic kind of draws back on that. It's instead of being built around kind of concepts like a zombie game or a conspiracy game, they tie it into licensed properties. So there's Ghosts of Albion, Army of Darkness, Buffy, Angel. They're working on a City of Heroes game. I don't know if they're still working on that, since I think City of Heroes is dead, but...
No, Justin's free to play at the moment.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But, cinematic is kind of cool because it's super light. And, as I said, we've been playing a Buffy role-playing game using cinematic Unisystem for... about 2 years now.
Yeah,
something like that.
Not exactly unsuccessful.
Yeah.
You were going to say something more, Eth?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a note that it has the benefit of being, like you said, bare bones to the point where it's very, very modular.
Yeah. And admittedly, most of you actually probably haven't seen the depths of Unisystem. One of the things I like about it is, while I usually run it as a very, very simple system with, fairly straightforward rules, there are, optional rules both in the core books and in the many, many fairly inexpensive expansions. That's one thing. It's not really a credit to the system, but the Unisystem books are not a very expensive series of role-playing books by the standard of role-playing games.
Yeah, and they have actually a nice digital distribution too.
They do, yeah, but
I have most of my Unisystem books actually through their digital distribution site, so...
Yeah, nice. But the thing is, while I usually just kind of stick to fairly bare bones stuff, if I really want to, there are, some pretty intense rules for dealing with exertion, endurance, sleeplessness, radiation, the effects of radiation, the effects of long-term mental damage through depression. They have all these crazy rules that are totally optional and totally kind of put to the side, that if you want, you could turn Unisystem into the most nutty, crazy rule-tastic system out there. But the basic system and the game that they actually kind of encourage you to just play with is really nice and simple, but you have those options to just kind of pick and choose things that you might want to use.
To be fair, on most of those optional rules, I do find that the way they write their optional rules, it's a good thing that they are optional, because having read through most of the books, because, that's kind of my thing. I do like to look at a bunch of systems and such. Those are the kind of rules that when I look at a system, I go, this is going to implode. And they got their place, but if you ever tried to stack too many of them on to any one game, it'd go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot. There's a lot of optional rules, and if you really try to put them all in together, the game would explode. But
GM beware, the optional rules are good in moderation, but don't go heavy on them.
No, definitely. I mean, if I'm doing a martial arts game, I'd incorporate their system of, kicks and punches and, different attacks doing different things into that. But I wouldn't necessarily also put that in at the same time as putting in their rules for radiation or their rules for zero gravity. If I tried putting all that stuff together into one thing, it would become a giant bookkeeping disaster.
Like D20.
Like D20.
Yes, like D20.
This is why I say optional is nice.
Yeah, I should also note here that the reason why I'm kind of pointing out that these optional rules are definitely in moderation is, I know I just made the joke like D20, but frankly, D20 does its large bunch of rules a little better than Unisystem does, hence the reason why I do like that they are very, very much optional rules.
Yes, no. To be fair, Eden Studios is not Wizards of the Coast. They, I like a lot of what they do. I love a lot of what they do. I love their company. I love their policies. I love their games. But they're not a huge company. They don't have, as many people working on them. And honestly, if I were to go book by book, there are a number of Unisystem books that honestly I feel kind of fall not completely apart, but that don't really work nearly as well as you get from the general standard of high quality games that you might expect more from like someone like Wizards or White Wolf, who have a lot more money to put behind all of their products.
Yeah, some of the books also really feel like they could be about half the length that they are.
Yeah.
One of the things with Eden, which can be either both a really good thing or a really bad thing, buyers out there, is that they put in quite a bit of fiction into their books, and it's generally actually pretty well done, but sometimes it's bad, and sometimes, and this is a worse thing, their text choices and the way that they shade their pages can make it dang near unreadable.
Yeah,
It's a
this
shame,
is especially
because it often happens with the good stories that they've been just really made hard on the eyes.
Yeah, it's especially prevalent in the All Flesh Must Be Eaten line, which is also their most expansive line, because the color scheme they went with was this. They have a big thing about text boxes. Gray. Yeah, so what they did was they tried to create like kind of this crazy, stone, earth, flesh kind of motif with a lot of their pages, which means that the fiction pieces, to distinguish them from the non-fiction pieces, the non-fiction pieces are white on black. The fiction pieces are gray on black, like gray backgrounds, black text, which can lead to them being kind of hard to read.
Yeah. Nothing against the system here, dear viewers, but yeah, sometimes the formatting in those books leaves a little to be desired.
Yeah, with their digital distribution on the Buffy game, their sample characters, I'm really glad they decided to go with the white text on those.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Well,
okay, so let's put it out here this way. Wonderful, wonderful game system that, while it's got a bunch of stuff that you can add in complexity, is actually very simple at its core, especially if you go cinematic. But the actual art in the books and such could use a little bit more work.
Yeah.
But that's not what you're here for. You're here for the system.
Exactly.
Well, hey, let's look at the bright side. At least they don't write their entire books in Comic Sans or something.
Oh, Jesus Christ, thank you. Yes. I honestly don't know if you're actually referencing something there, because anyone
I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
Anyone who's published anything professionally and used Comic Sans, I want you to seriously take a moment and think about what you were doing with your life, because there is no excuse. There is no excuse to publish an official piece of merchandise or a card or a poster or anything and use Comic Sans ever. Sorry, no.
You're that workplace that Frog and I work for?
Oh, God.
No.
Anyway, not getting into Comic Sans.
Font rant over.
Yeah, let's stop talking about the art and fonts for a minute.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we should actually, go back and... We've been recording for about an hour, so why don't we refresh our viewers, or listeners, knowledge on what we've been talking about so far. It's time for ratings. Temra.
Right. Yes.
D20. 1 to 10.
I'd actually give it about a 5. Like a lot of people brought out, if you're a newbie that likes your kind of handhold and you're new, this is a pretty good system, because it really does do a lot of handholding. There's a good amount of set rules. But if you're a type of person that really doesn't like to be bogged down by that, it's not really a great system. And speaking from my experience with a lot of the players, there is a lot of like rules lawyer and min-maxing culture that might turn you off the gaming. I know like Frog and I, one of our friends, she actually had such a bad experience with Dungeons and Dragons. She hates the system and swears it off because of that culture. So be a little bit warned of that. But other than that, if you got a good GM, and you are new to role playing, there's a reason why this is kind of a big, I guess,
a big name in the industry.
Yeah, big thing in the industry. It's a decent system, but once you start getting more, you can find your way towards other stuff like Unit system.
Yeah. Okay. So 5 for players. Would you have a different score for GMs, or basically the same?
Hold on. Can I ask a question there?
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. I mean, I know I've been kind of advocating for the underdog as far as the way we feel about this system, but again, part of the reason I wanted to, do this was, I'm mainly pandering to the new player and new GM bit.
Of course.
As far as these ratings go, as far as the 5 rating, are you generalizing as far as the new versus veteran players, or are you just...
It's overall in general. I mean, if you're a new player but you really want to kind of be a little bit more creative, a more flexible system is going to do better for you. You're just going to probably end up really hating yourself by being introduced to a system that essentially really does live by its rules, and they're pretty heavy rules. And if you want to kind of, really have a customizable character or really kind of play around with role playing, it doesn't give you a lot to really work with.
Yeah, I found that especially with 4.0 actually, due to its action nature.
I actually had the opposite with 4.0, but that's because I ran with one of our friends at our college, and he wasn't really a rules-heavy person. He really was a person that put forward and say, play your character, as opposed to a lot of people that I have played under that it's like, yeah, so I made this Hound Archon Paladin who, can smite evil with his magic sword.
I think it should be pointed out here,
here's
it wasn't abundantly obvious, all these scores and all these opinions are horribly subjective.
Yeah.
They're opinions.
Yes, these are opinions.
I'm not saying that all the people are like that. It's just most of the games I have experienced.
Yeah.
And that's my kind of experience of Dungeons and Dragons mostly. And it really kind of does feel like it does have its core in wargaming, which, yeah, rules have its point in wargaming. But when you're kind of making an individual person, it's and you're trying to tell a story, sometimes you want to throw those rules out the window. And it's not like you can't play rules light with Dungeons and Dragons. I've done it. Our friend that we mentioned has done it. But it really is one of those systems that, yeah, honestly, as a whole system, I give it about a 5. It has good, solid structure, but overall, just kind of really will bog you down if you want to be I guess more of an acting role player. I guess Annie type.
More of a character or story-driven role player.
Yeah, like an Annie or a Ben from Dwarfs and Droids.
That's great, by the way. You guys should check it out.
Yeah,
yes.
I think we'll have to put a link down in the comment section.
Yeah.
But
the description, I mean.
And I'll say the same thing for the GM score too. I mean, if you're a new GM and you're looking for something that very much is structured and to kind of help you really learn when to roll and not to roll, kind of having this hand-holding system, it really is a good system to start GMing on. But there's just kind of better systems out there for the type of role playing that we do. I mean, we're, some people, the min-maxing rules lawyer thing is their thing. And you know what? That's great. You have fun doing that, but we don't.
Yeah. I would actually tend to agree with you there because while it does offer a lot of really, like again, the take 10 or take 20 thing that we were talking about, there is that kind of guideline for new GMs. I do feel that it also, it has the danger of putting GMs in really, really bad habits.
Oh, amen to that.
Yeah.
I mean, again,
habits,
with 4.0.
amen.
Yeah.
Paul.
I mean, as you said, we've run with our friend, but he's run countless games. Like, usually it's because they only last one or two sessions, but
Right.
and that has nothing to do with how good they are. That just has to do with the fact that he's lazy.
Oh God, I really hope he's watching this.
Selectively lazy.
Yeah,
Selectively lazy.
Selectively lazy, but he has this way of going about things that's abnormal, and he's done it for years, ever since 3.5, and even before that. But you know, with the way that 4.0 is structured, with the action system, the way they describe the actions, it's like it's not giving you much wiggle room.
It isn't, though. It works well as an intro system.
And again, it depends on the GM.
Because
yeah,
I actually, well, that was my first experience jamming, and that was 4.0. It wasn't like I was new to gaming.
Oh yeah.
And hold on, I'm gonna say, just in terms of whether or not that is a good introduction. You know, you can make an argument that teaches bad rules, like it teaches bad habits, but think about it this way: when you're getting into, say, Civilization, there's two ways of getting into it. There's either jump in the deep end by playing against people who are significantly better than you and then trying to learn from your constant hilarious failures, or try and go in nice and slow, and maybe you'll learn some bad, habits initially, but at least you're not being constantly frustrated. And the thing is, some people can do that first way, but for most of us, the easing way is better, even if we do have to unlearn some things we learn initially. And fourth ed is that easier way of getting into role playing. So I'd say that,
yes.
Yeah, from that perspective, I really can't say that it's a bad, introduction.
Well, no. D20, 4.0 and 3.5 being different things, Pathfinder, yada yada, it being different things, yeah, sure. But let's not forget that as much as we, kind of ragged on it for a while, it is pretty much the bar by which all others are measured. It's really a very average system that has both good and bad to it, and really its greatest failing is the fact that it was too successful and they did let it out there so many people could get at it, and it, like I said about rules, too many of them, and sometimes a system starts to implode under its own weight.
Speaking of imploding under its own weight, or in this case, length, why don't we move on to the next rating? Morath, I believe that would be, White Wolf in particular, Exalted.
From all of it, at least 2.0 and beyond. I wasn't around for 1.0 as far as Exalted is concerned, but as far as 1.0 is 2.0 and beyond is concerned, I'd have to say it's my user familiarity rating. Starting player, I give it a 7 out of 10.
All right.
On that one.
Quite respectable.
And as far as the GM friendly side of things, I'm not gonna lie. New GMs, I would not pick up the system as a first unless you've played several games of it. It is quite difficult just because you have to deal with the fact that all of your players are god moding it. There's no minimaxing, it's just playing well or not at all.
Okay.
You have to prepare for every eventuality. You have to make your goal is to make a trap that you can get out of, so that your players can think of a way to beat you at it.
Okay, so
I'd give that a 3 out of 10 as far as initial game.
Putting this one out there, as like I said, I actually did jump in back in 1, and familiar enough with it. It was my first one. Frankly, I'm going to say that, at least for me, it wasn't a particularly good first game system. It, for a player, I'd probably rate it at about a 3. Now, maybe it got cleaned up by Second-E, but
And 2.5 made it just brilliant.
Beside the point, but the actual dice system works really well, but the charms can be an absolute complex mess that you can drown And that is very easily the hardest part. The actual basic mechanics, no problems, very simple, can be done. Only problem is you need a bunch of friggin' dice. But the actual charms themselves, they can get to be a huge mess, and that would be where a new player might stumble.
Well, yeah, one of the
Same
things,
with a new GM.
Yeah, one of the things that we started with is one of the best races to start off with, not mechanically, but just by the amount of information you're given, is the sidereals, because they only have a certain set amount of charms.
No.
Yeah. So like, you don't have to read through that many. Now, granted, their effects are weird. Like, I would not recommend starting with sidereals on that basis alone, because they're out there.
Yeah.
But they have a small amount of charms, so if you have an experienced GM, it works as an introduction to the system. But as far as being new player friendly, yeah, it was really cleaned up a lot.
Well, good to know, but still,
Yeah.
the point being there that there is a potential pitfall.
Oh, definitely.
All right.
But again, that is also where the GM being a 3 is, because it is hard. It is hard for them to make up for it, because they have to be the ones to, a good exalted GM makes it an easy transition. And I had one, but
well, let's all hope for good exalted GMs. When we move on to Colonel, your rating for West End's Star Wars D6?
D6, as you might have kind of guessed by when I was talking about it, is highly variable. It being a very heavy rules light one, especially the way that I like to play in it, it can, if you want to go rules heavy with it, skip the system, just skip it. It really doesn't support that very well. If you really want the rules heavy side of things and you absolutely must play in Star Wars, go ahead, pick up Saga Edition. It might not be in print anymore, but it's your D20 Star Wars. It'll do you fine. I don't like it. That's me.
It's still in print, by the way. At least last I checked.
No, they've stopped making new things for it.
Yeah, that's right. They came up with a new system recently.
Oh yeah,
I don't know about that. But as for D6, though, like I said, if you want rules heavy, do not apply. This is not your place. If you're looking for a fairly light rule system and you've got the imagination, either as a player or a GM, it's very good for character-driven, just quick rolls to make sure that everything works. It'll go ahead and make for a fairly easy thing for a new player. Kind of like Exalted, it's got the issue that a lot more gets put on the GM. You do have to be imaginative, you do have to go ahead and go through things. There's a lot of source material for this one, quite a bit of it. Like I said, the Star Wars Expanded Universe essentially began in the West End game books. There was a little stuff before that, but it really came from there. And, there's a lot that you can go and draw from, some of it better than others, like anything. But, yeah, you are going to have to work as a GM for this one. And it also kind of runs into another odd thing, if this is your first GMing thing, is running in a actual established canon can get a little weird. You are going to have to work with things, especially since there are a lot of role players out there who want to do nothing more than watch that established world burn by changing something or going ahead and... I know that there are many groups out there that if you drop them into the middle of the Galactic Civil War with an objective and, motivations, they're going to throw their characters away and go try and assassinate Luke Skywalker just to see if they can.
Or they'll go and kill Buffy. But hey, who's keeping track?
Okay, to be fair, that one was not our fault.
Yeah.
It was one of your faults.
Okay, yeah, so it was Morath's fault. Beside the point. Running in an established canon does bring up...
Hey, one person.
What's great is that I got her killed once, and then I killed her the second time.
We're technically not sure about that, Morith. But my point here is that running in an established canon, you're probably going to be running with fans, and you're going to have to keep a lot of things in mind. And that's another part of how Star Wars D6 can get a little bit messy. Because if you're running in the galaxy far, far away, you better know something about it. Wikipedia is your friend. So for a GM, imagination definitely needed, the ability to keep a bunch of information together. The actual mechanical running of it, not very hard, but keeping in mind that you are in this canon and got all that going, just fine. Now, if you just want to pull the D6 system straight out and use it for something else, frankly, piss easy.
Fair enough. So, would you like to give an arbitrary number for the GM score?
I'd love to give a 10, but it doesn't go on that one. For a new GM, like I said, if you are absolutely new, bumbling your way into things, and you don't have if you've not been playing for a while, if you don't think in ways of the large universe, it's actually, frankly, going to come out to like a 1 or 2. But if you do like looking over the big picture and making everything work together, or just like moving off into an absolutely unexplored corner of the galaxy and doing something there that, you know, happens to be somewhat Star Wars branded and keeping completely away from canon, then it, well, honestly, like I said, it was the first thing I ever GM'd, and my first game was almost an unqualified success. So I'd call it pretty new-friendly if you do have that kind of mindset. Also, it was the first game that I really played that I, absolutely sat down and really enjoyed the game, and the GM was middling okay. So for a new player, I'd probably give it a 7, 8, especially if you like Star Wars. It's kind of one of those weird ones that you gotta be the right player for this system. It's definitely not for everyone.
It was my first long-running campaign.
Mine too. Yeah, and I'd say that both me and Morath and the last player who were in it more than anyone else would probably all rate the thing as a 10, at least in terms of our experience with it, though it might be a bit of a gilded...
Well, Duhat, at one point it was like crack cocaine to you.
Oh, God.
You were like, are we gonna run D6? And then you would, like, take away my crack cocaine, which was our Buffy game.
Damn straight, if I'm supplying something, I'm going to use it and abuse it in order to get what I want. Speaking of using and abusing, for Unisystem, I'm going to, it's not really any sort of surprise that I absolutely freaking love this system, and if I were to rate it purely on my experiences with it, I'd go 10 out of 10 for both play and, running. I love running the system, and the few times I've played with other people, including the first time I actually ever experienced the game was as a player in a Shadowrun mod that someone had created that was amazing and absolutely sold me on the system. But taking off my goggles, taking off the fanboy goggles as a new player thing, I'd still say it's a great system for both new players and new GMs. I'd, in fact, probably go all the way up to a 10 for players. But for GMs, it kind of depends. I'd say the game ranks at a solid 8 or 9 without supplements. With the supplements, if you're willing to put down money for the supplements, the game goes straight up to a 10, because with those supplements, you pretty much have an infinitely varied game with a gigantic library of rules to use or not use that pretty much makes it the first and last system you're going to need if you actually enjoy playing it. On that, though, I'd kind of have 2 recommendations. The first is, if you want to put in the time and effort to go through the supplements, the core book for All Flesh Must Be Eaten is it's what you want. It has the full game. It's got almost all the supplements tie into All Flesh. Having said that, though, I'd say that All Flesh is not my favorite of the core books. That would actually go to Terra Primate, which is a intelligent ape role-playing game, which is not really my cup of tea, but as a core book, it has more in it and better stuff in it than any of the other core standard Unisystem core books. And the same general idea kind of applies to cinematic, where I'd say probably the best core rulebook would be Angel, the Angel role-playing game. But the best book, if you're willing to go for supplements, would be the Buffy role-playing game, because it has a creature supplement, a magic supplement, and a general player guide that are all really nice and add a lot to the game.
I'd kind of like to toss a second opinion out here, Duhad.
Go ahead.
I do agree with you that cinematic Unisystem is absolutely wonderful for new players, and frankly on the GM front too. It's very, very good. I'd put it in definitely the 8 range. Right. I gotta say though, core Unisystem, the mechanics are simple, but character creation, if you're not used to this system, it's a mess. It's really a mess. It's got too many skills, and it doesn't do very well at guiding you to skills. Especially given the point values that it gives you. You can either try and make a realistic character and have them absolutely nerfed at everything, or you can try and make someone who's just good at a couple of things. And I do find that that's a major flaw in the basic. I'd honestly put basic Unisystem, if this is your first time playing the game, it really is going to clock in at about that 5 mark of a D20. And given the whole optional rules thing that can go on there, especially if you pick up a core book and you're trying to figure out how to run it and you don't know which one of the many different dead worlds from All Flesh must be in, these are, by the way, campaign settings that they put in them, to go with, it can actually get in there too. Cinematic, wonderful, wonderful stuff, but I think that it really should be considered as separate from the core Unisystem, because the two of them do play very differently.
Okay, and yeah, to be fair, I'll throw in another caveat there, and that's that if you are new to GMing, there's kind of a double-edged sword when it comes to Unisystem, whereas it can be an incredibly friendly, pretty easy system to run if you have a good group of players to play with. If you have a good group of players and a good GM, the game really, in my opinion, can't be beat. On the other hand, if you have a bad GM or the GM isn't able to control their players, it uses a point-buy system that can be exploited like nobody's business to create the most horrifyingly broken and silly characters. So
fly up the cliff.
Fly up the cliff. Oh, our first experience with Unisystem.
The first time I tried running a Unisystem with these guys, there was just this absolute mess with one of the players essentially just continually trying to break a character. And I had to spend so much time working with him to keep his character under wraps that I let everyone else make characters that they didn't realize were as broken as they were, and they're just ended up being this total mess in what was supposed to be a very tense survival game turned into this ridiculous farce of people running around one-shotting bandits by, pile driving their heads into the sides of bridges.
The non-lethal damage.
Yeah, someone actually managed to kill another character in one shot with non-lethal damage, which was.
Then there was also the flamboyantly gay doctor.
We had the most offensive characters ever because we were expecting them to die.
Yeah, because they all thought they were making characters for Meat Grinder, but they broke them so hard, and I didn't realize it, that they ended up creating superheroes. So, yeah, you have to be
And that's when we found out the D10s love me.
Yeah, so, okay, Unisystem with a great group is amazing. With the wrong group, it can turn into a gigantic mess. But, so, yeah, if you have the right group of players, then I cannot recommend it highly enough. If you don't pay attention to what you're doing when you start, or you have a group of players that are more experienced than you are and are actively trying to get stuff past you, it can become something of a trying experience. So, forewarned, forearmed.
And that's frankly something that you can say about all systems. But yeah, this one is one of the ones that, simply by its universal nature, you gotta worry about.
Yeah. So, I think that's about all the time we have for this week. I think this has all gone, pretty well. We have, I know I've, found this all pretty interesting. We got some cool games to check out. And when we come back, we're going to have something else to talk about.
Oh, let's hope.
Let's hope.
Hopefully we don't end up being here next week and all just sitting around going, wait.
We do
we
have
have no idea.
We do have some great future topics that we did bring up in this podcast.
Yeah. Well, hopefully.
Like jamming.
Here's to this whole thing not crashing and burning as of the next episode.
Yay!
For Roll DX, I've been Duhad.
I've been Morath.
I've been Colonel the Frog.
And I've been Tim Ranger.
And we'll see you next time.